Greetings all, BWS2K here. I want to take a minute to talk about Marvel Heroic Role-Playing. It's a game that came out in 2012 and went out of print shortly thereafter, but I myself have enjoyed playing it and running it in a whole variety of formats, play-by-post forums, virtual tabletops like Roll20, at the local comic shop with people who've been role-playing for decades, and then also even at the kitchen table with my own kids. So there's some really great resources around the internet and here on YouTube, and I just wanted to make a small addition to their number. I'm sure if you've investigated this at all, you've run into some other really great resources. Some of the things that I was seeing kind of said it was a complicated system, or they were turned off by sort of the what they were considering unintuitive sort of flow of the system. So I just wanted to throw this out there. If you're considering playing it, or if you're brand new, or I may even use this for my players in the future as an introductory video just really quick. So as a watcher, the number one thing to know about the game is that the rule of cool. If I'm your watcher, the number one rule is that the rule of cool applies, right? The rule of cool, whatever is cool, that's going to trump the rules. You don't need your own book. If we're in person, you can borrow mine. You don't need your own data files. I can print them out for you. You don't even need your own dice. You can borrow dice from me or from someone else. Those things are almost secondary, even though they are concerns. There's a lot of dice in this, and obviously you need some standard by which you're following the rules, but you don't need a whole lot of extra. Um, it's just not necessary. So as a very quick example, and then we'll do a more thorough example. If you're somebody, if we're playing and I say to you, like hordes of mindless ones are barreling down Fifth Avenue, and the only thing between them and a crowded Starbucks is an Abrams tank that some soldier decided to leave behind. He went AWOL, he bugged out, he didn't sign up for this. So what is Spider-Man going to do about that? So you're playing Spider-Man and you say, well, Peter's always wanted to drive a tank, maybe in your world. So he web slings over to the tank and crawls down inside. He wants to fire directly into the horde, and he says some sort of witty comment like, "Thanks for thinking of me, fellas." Because of course that's what Spider-Man does. So you might say, so what am I supposed to do? What dice do I pick out? So you say the cool thing you want to do, and then I would help you pick the dice, going spot by spot, area by area, section by section, however you want to reference it, but the different areas that you would use from your data file to assemble your dice pool. And I would only need to do that a couple times, and then you'd figure it out. Some things you do more frequently than others, but it's all very, very simple. But you have to start with something cool, because otherwise it gets dicey. If you start asking me like, well, do you think Spider-Man would have a chance to? Nope. You've already lost it. If you think Spider-Man wants to do a thing, do it. Just do it. Just make it cool. So I have a more thorough example here with a data file that I made, and then a data file that I got offline from a really great website, Plot Points, Marvel Plot Points. I'll put a link in the description, and they've just got tons of great resources for this system. So we have Deathlok facing Mac Gargan, Scorpion, for whatever contrived reasons we want to use. We'll say they're in a deserted subway station. Scorpion's been hiding out for the last couple weeks. Maybe he robbed some ATMs, but one of the more recent robberies was Tracy Collins, who is Michael Collins' wife. This Deathlok is Michael Collins. So the whole place is like broken floorboards and cobwebs and makeshift lighting, that Scorpion is using. It's all very hideoutish, right? So Deathlok is kind of a pacifist. So he wants to sneak up on Scorpion and just knock him right out before they get into any sort of prolonged battle that would bring the whole place on top of them. That's kind of characteristic of Michael Collins' Deathlok. So going through his data file, and I know I formatted it a little bit differently than normal, but it's still obvious what sections are sections and what sections aren't sections, right? So he's acting alone, so he'd use his solo die. He's going to use Pacifist Programmer as a D8 because he's hoping to avoid combat completely. Enhanced Senses probably help him navigating the dark environment from the Cyborg Body power set, but his pistol doesn't come into play here, so he's not really getting that. So we don't take that dice or any of that stuff. A Combat Master definitely applies. So altogether it's 2 D10s and 2 D8s, which is not bad, but you can actually split your specialty dice up into multiples of lower steps, so I can take that D10 and put it into two, make it two D8s. So the pool becomes a single D10 and four D8s. And his goal is to cause physical stress. He's trying to knock out the scorpion. So when he rolls, you can see what he's rolling there, and he's going to take the excuse me. He's going to take it. He's going to take two dice to make a total, and that number is what counts. So he's going to take the 8 and the 6 for a 14, and then the size of the effect die is what counts. So he's going to take a D10. So that's all that is necessary there. You pick two dice to make a total, and then you pick a third dice for your effect die, and the size of the effect die is what matters, not the number that gets rolled on it. But if you roll a 1, you can't use that dice at all. Okay, so that's what he does for his turn. Scorpion gets a reaction roll. So Scorpion builds his pool in the same way. He's alone, so it's a D8. Tactical dunce. I'm kind of playing both sides here, so it's a little bit weird to narrate me playing both sides of myself. But tactical dunce seems like it could apply in the opposite sense, like against him, because it feels like he probably should have had some kind of tripwire or security or something, right? So it's kind of working against him. So in order to do that with a distinction, it actually becomes a D4, and if you're a player, you get a plot point. If you're the watcher, you get a doom die to add to your doom pool. So I'm going to take that because as the watcher playing the Scorpion, it helps me grow my doom pool, but it also fits because it's kind of like, yeah, he should have seen this coming or should have done something, right? What else? So he gets enhanced reflexes, enhanced durability, and combat expert. So one from each of those sections, this representing sort of his being unaware of something and then being sort of attacked. So I don't want to use any of the doom die. It's not really a complicated mechanic that any of the players really need to understand. So I roll what I have. It's a D4 and 4 D8s. So there's a 1, I can't use that, and there's 3 4s and a 3. So this is going to be pretty sad. I do a total of 8 with an effective D8, and that's not going to help me any. So Deathlok's total is a 14 against Scorpion's 8, which is a good time to talk about extraordinary success. So if the difference is 5 or more between them, which 14 minus 8 is a difference of more than 5, then the effect die that Deathlok has actually gets stepped up to the next size. So the D10 effect die becomes a D12. So Deathlok's total beats Scorpion's total. So Deathlok's effect die takes place. It was originally a D10. It gets stepped up to a D12 because his total was so much more than Scorpion's, okay? And it's physical stress. I didn't put any markers on the screen, but at this point you would put a token or an X or whatever in Scorpion's D12 physical stress. He's almost completely out of commission, physically speaking. Any more damage to him at all, even a D4 worth of damage, is going to set him over the edge, and that's going to knock him out. Okay, so that's Deathlok's turn. Scorpion has his turn now. There's only 2 characters in the scene. So he kind of sprawls back from the chop or whatever, the karate chop or something like that. And, maybe his stacks of cash go flying everywhere. And he says, some sort of villainous, like, who dares go here or whatever. And Deathlok, makes an appeal, says something like, go quietly and I'll help you out. I'll speak in your favor at court or to the police or whatever, but of course Mac Gargan is not really up for that. So he shouts never and rages into his offensive. So now we're building it's Scorpion's turn. We're building his pool. So he takes his solo die. He takes explosive temper, distinction. That's as a D8 because it's definitely he's upset. Superhuman strength at D10, but I add in I do the SFX for anger surge, so that becomes a D12. Okay, that applies. So I mean, you don't see it on the screen, but I would do that as the watcher. And then cybernetic tail and combat expert also would get added in. So again, we're just going section by section, top to bottom. If there were other things going on, if there was an asset in play or a complication or some other special thing going on, that would get added in too. But we're keeping it simple. And for the first game or two, I don't usually add in a whole lot of extra stuff. We keep to a rhythm. We move down through the character sheet. We say what we're gonna do. We pick our die and we do it. Oh, that's my phone. Apologies. I don't know if you heard that ding. So he puts all those things together. He has a dice pool of 4 D8s and a D12. He rolls. It's a great roll. There's no ones, which is nice. and he can make a total of 15 with the D12 effect. So he is hitting Deathlok back as hard as Deathlok hit him if he succeeds. Or depending on what Deathlok rolls for a total, he may hit him even harder. So Deathlok does the same thing for his reaction roll, goes down through the list. You're starting to see the pattern here, hopefully. Solo die, killing machine, even though he's kind of a pacifist, he is built as a killing machine. Superhuman durability, again, no pistol, but he is a combat master. So that's 3 D10s and a D8. So we roll that, and because I'm a pretty terrible roller, but it's kind of weird to be rolling against myself. This is more typical of what I roll. 2 1s, you can't use those dice at all. So the best he can do, you have to make a total. If you only have 1 dice, it has to be, if you only have 1 die, it has to be your total. If you only have 2 die, they have to be your total. You can't say, well, I'm going to use this as my effect die. Nope, you got to make the total for a total of 11, and then you just magically get a default D4 effect die if there's no die that you can use as an effect die. So with Deathlok's total of 11 against Scorpion's total of 15, Scorpion wins, and he inflicts his physical stress effect die of D12. So now Deathlok has been hit for D12, and I would mark that. I don't have a section for it on his sheet because I use a different thing when I'm doing it live, but I would mark that he is also 1 hit away from passing out or being knocked out or whatever. So other things that may have happened, if Deathlok had a plot point, you can see maybe on your screen he has the special effects that allows him to ignore physical stress unless it's in a specific nature. The Watcher character, or the Watcher for Scorpion, could have used some Doom dice to activate some of the opportunities on the ones that Deathlok rolled. The system calls ones opportunities. So when I roll a 1, it's an opportunity for the Watcher to take advantage of it. So there's other things that could have happened, but it's not necessary as the Watcher, as the GM, to explain everything that could happen. It's easier to explain what's happening as it's happening, and then add in those little things as they come. So I didn't bother with assets. I didn't bother with complications or stunts or even scene distinctions, even though I definitely could have. They aren't important. What's important is that we're telling an exciting story. Each turn is the panel of a comic, so it's quick. And if somebody is just getting into the game and they have no reference for anything, this is going to introduce them, gives them some exposure to the core mechanic, the core feature of the game, which is simply building a dice pool, rolling it, picking a total, and an effect die. That's it. That's all you really need to know, and you pick that up in the first couple minutes, in the first couple turns, however, whatever pace your game is going. So kind of in a conclusion, if you're watching this because you're going to be in a game of mine, or if I could just humbly offer some advice, don't over-explain the system. I feel like this video is already going on too long, but it's because I'm really trying to reiterate some things. You don't over-explain it as a watcher. If you have new role players or people who are just new to the system, they don't need to know all the details. Just get them excited. Tell them to do cool things. Help them to be more excited, and they'll do more cool things. That's all you have to do. Being descriptive is really helpful because, like for instance, in that tank example, it was Spider-Man getting into a tank. I remember having a player one time asking if Spider-Man could use his acrobatics die, and I said, I don't know that I've ever read a comic where Spider-Man walks someplace. So in my opinion, Spider-Man should almost always be using his acrobatic die because he flips and slings and jumps and tumbles and somersaults, and it's just, that's part of who he is. So you describe that stuff, and then as you describe it as the watcher, your players pick up on that and they want to be more descriptive as well. And then of course, being that third thing on the screen, the do cool things. Always do cool things. In line at Kinko's, I was getting ready to print out some of the stuff for a game that I was running, and there was a woman who was probably in her 70s, and she turned around and she asked me what I was doing, and I said, I'm printing this stuff out for a game. She said, oh, is this a game I could play? And I said, do you know who Spider-Man is? And she said, yes. And I said, do you think you could make Spider-Man do cool things? Do you think you could tell cool stories about Spider-Man? Oh, yes. She said, well, there you go. That's really all you need to know. The rest is just, the watcher will explain it to you as you go on. And then pacing is really important, especially for somebody who's new to the system. I didn't describe Spider-Man as doing 3 somersaults, a backflip, kicking one of the mindless ones, rebounding, jumping into the tank, figuring out its controls, loading up the thing. No. That's too much. You're talking about a panel in a comic book, or maybe like a triptych, a panel as you're doing something. If you're taking longer than 1 beat, then you've got to either break it up or figure out a way to say it more concisely, describe it more concisely. And that's it. That's really it. I've like I said, I've played this game with my kids. I've played this game with veteran role players. All of it are like, and we've all had a great time, and we all have great memories from all of it. So I do recommend the system. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and I will get back to you as soon as I can with the answers. Because yeah, the more people that play this, it's kind of a dead system. It never really had a chance, and so it's very niche. But for those of us who do play it, it's nice to see other people enjoying it as well. So, like I said, leave me a comment if you have any questions or comments or observations. Thanks so much for watching, and Excelsior. We'll see you next time.